Hello, my name is Katerina Davidovich.
I'm Carrie Murphy.
I'm Hannah Stutzman.
And we are genetic counseling students from the Long Island University Post Genetic Counseling Program. We'll be presenting the genetic counseling admissions module. It will be separated into two parts. The first part is submitting your application, and the second part is what happens after submitting your application. Part one is submitting your application. So prerequisites vary by program, so please make sure to check your program websites. Generally, all programs require biology, genetics, embryology, chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, statistics, and psychology. Some programs focus more on the scientific background, while other programs focus more on your psychosocial background. And you'll be required to take more classes for whichever category your program prefers. Recently, the GRE has become optional for many of the programs. Some programs will allow you to include your GRE scores as a supplement if your GPA is not as competitive. While there is no minimum GPA for most programs, a competitive GPA is around a 3.5, although there are students that are below that and above that are admitted. A large part of your application is relevant advocacy. Relevant advocacy means that you are counseling an individual and you have a supervisor who is giving you feedback. Some examples of this include crisis counseling, and this can be anything from suicide call or text counseling, or maybe working for a support group for eating disorders, for example. Next, working with adults, children, or the elderly that have disabilities. And finally, peer counseling for those of you that have been an RA or a residential assistant during your time at university. These are just a few examples. If you have any concerns about whether your experiences qualify as relevant advocacy, feel free to reach out to your programs. Some programs even have extensive lists of what they allow as relevant advocacy for their applications. Keep in mind that there might be a minimum number of volunteer hours required by the program that you're applying to. Another way to strengthen your application is by exposing yourself to genetic counseling. While this might not be a requirement for all programs, it is definitely something that programs appreciate. So first is shadowing a genetic counselor. You can find a genetic counselor through the nsgc.org. This stands for the National Society of Genetic Counselors. They have a directory of genetic counselors through which you can filter them by ones that allow student contact. An email is provided, so you can email whatever genetic counselor you're interested in to see if they would allow you to shadow. Now, don't be discouraged if you get rejections or some don't answer, just keep emailing your genetic counselors. In addition to, or alternatively, you can interview genetic counselors. You would find them the same way as I just mentioned. Try to interview as many genetic counselors as you can from various specialties in various regions of the country. Another way you can expose yourself to genetic counseling is by working as a genetic counseling assistant. You would work directly with a genetic counselor, and you would usually help them with administrative tasks. Other ways you can expose yourself to genetic counseling are through webinars and learning modules. These would generally be available through program websites, but another good way to find learning modules and webinars is through a Discord chat that we'll talk a little bit more about later. It's called GC Chat. And this is a network of prospective students, current genetic counseling students, and working professionals. And they share opportunities where you can gain exposure to genetic counseling.
So the next thing that you would want with your application is a personal statement. And this is really a chance for the programs to get to know you. And so some things that you might be talking about in your personal statement would be specific questions, such as your achievements, hardships, overcoming obstacles, who you are, advocacy and volunteer work, or even why genetic counseling. And so these are typically around 500 to 1,000 words, but it really depends on the program. And we really recommend starting early and asking others to read over your work. And so the next thing that you would want with your application are letters of recommendation. And these are another aspect of your application that can really shed light on your work ethic and character. These should be written by people who know you well and can speak genuinely about you. Some examples would include professors from relevant subjects, supervisors from volunteer work or advocacy work, or even maybe your boss from work. It is definitely best to ask at least 1 month in advance to make sure that they have enough time to write these letters for you. So next, we're going to talk about what happens after you submit your application. So after you submit your application, you may be invited by programs that are interested in you to the interview. And these interviews can be with a group of interviewees, individual, or hybrid. They also may be in person, over the phone, or on video chat. Remember to be yourself and to dress and act professionally. This is a good opportunity to make yourself stand out and to leave a good impression. Also, be prepared to answer common questions such as, tell me about yourself, or why genetic counseling? This is also a good time to learn more about the program and to make sure that it's a good fit for you. So be sure to come with good questions to ask. And remember, you are interviewing the program just as much as they're interviewing you.
So now we're going to talk about the match process, which is something that everybody goes through after they're done with interviews. So genetic counseling school isn't like other grad schools where you get accepted to a bunch of schools and you pick your top pick. Each genetic counseling student who is accepted is matched to just one program. So the way this works is that once interviews are over, applicants will rank all the programs they interviewed at in order of preference. So the program that you rank number 1 is your top choice school. Programs will do the same thing for students. Different programs might have different scholarships, so you might be able to actually rank programs multiple times depending on if you're interested in scholarships or not. Once the students and the programs all have their lists put together, these go to something called the match algorithm, which will find the best match for each applicant in each program. And this always takes the student preference above the program preference. So for example, if there are 2 programs that rank you and want you, you would go to the program that you ranked higher on your list. So when match day comes and the results of the match algorithm come out, you either get an email that says, congratulations, you matched at this school, or we're sorry, you did not match. And another thing to note is that this match is binding. So if you do match, you do have to go to this school in the fall. The timeline for match is quite long. So beginning back in September when applications start, you sign up for the match, which costs $100. But a lot of people are able to get this fee waived through applying for a fee waiver. Come late March, typically when interviews are over, the rank list opens and you're able to start submitting your rank list. This rank list is open until mid-April, where you have a hard deadline of when you need to get your rank list in. And then from there, the algorithm takes about 2 weeks to run and for everybody to check to make sure that the algorithm ran properly, making match day in late April. For students who didn't match, they might have an opportunity to still get into school through the post-match process. Not all schools will fill all of their slots, so any schools that have open slots will usually advertise this, and then students who went through the match process are able to reach out to these programs to see about applying. So as far as costs and financial aid and scholarships goes, this is going to vary quite a bit from school to school, with some schools being completely free with scholarships and other schools costing over 100 grand for both years combined. Here we have a few tips and tricks to try to get that cost down to a minimum. So one big thing to keep in mind is in-state tuition is usually much cheaper than out-of-state tuition or even private school tuition. Depending on the school you go to though, if you change your residency, you may qualify for in-state tuition your second year, but not all programs do that. So make sure you reach out and check before relying on that. Like I mentioned before, there's actually a fee waiver available for signing up for match, but also a lot of programs will offer application waivers to help bring down the cost quite a bit. Like I mentioned before, some programs will offer scholarship money, but this amount of scholarship money will vary quite a lot with each program. But one of the bigger scholarships that came to be in more recent years is the Alliance to Increase Diversity in Genetic Counseling Scholarship, which actually gives full rides to those who meet the requirements for this. Not all programs do that though, so definitely check and make sure that the programs you're looking at offer that scholarship. This is just a couple of resources to help you out as you think about applying, but also maybe want to learn more about genetic counseling. Like Katerina talked about earlier, there is a Discord server, which consists of people who are interested in applying to graduate school, as well as current students in GC programs. So it's a great place for support and resources. And usually around application time, there are actually personal statement swaps happening. So that's a good chance for you to have other people read your work. There's also the National Society for Genetic Counselors, which is a good resource for people to find genetic counselors on, but also resources to be able to read more and learn more about genetic counseling. And then lastly, there's the Minority Genetics Professionals Network, which is intended to be a safe space for minority genetics professionals to find a community with each other.
We'd like to thank the Long Island University host class of 2023 for helping put this presentation together. We'd also like to thank our program director, Monica Zach-Golas, and Dr. Heather Butz. Interested in learning more? Head to the next module on career development.